Welcome to the True Life Balance Podcast. My name is Brad Lancaster.
And my name is Tiffany Lancaster. And this is a podcast about relationships and deep connection.
And this is a podcast about health and fitness.
And this is a podcast about consciousness and purpose.
And this is a podcast about business, sales, marketing, entrepreneurship. In other words, it's a podcast about everything that we care about. So come along for the ride and hope you enjoy. Well, today, this is episode 19 for us of True Life Balance Podcast, although we are going to be changing the name, I think. We're talking about that. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have our guests on today, Jon and Tracy Gossett. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks
for having us.
Yes. Thanks.
This is exciting for me because we haven't had too many people from Tooele County on our podcast. And we have so much more in common with you guys, I think, than you realize or Tiff realizes. And first of all, you're entrepreneurs, run your own businesses, which is one of the things that we do. You also, Jon, you both run the Life's Worth Living Foundation, a nonprofit that deals with suicide prevention and suicide awareness, right?
Yep.
And you also are a blended family, which I did not know until I listened to your podcast.
Well, we've been keeping a secret.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. So you'll hear it if you listen to episode 1 of Beauty and the Shitshow, their podcast. It's a really cool story. And I don't want to tell it, but I wanted to have you guys on because we believe that one of the greatest callings in life is to go through this life together with a soulmate, with a partner, a companion, somebody that you've committed to doing this journey together. And we're a second marriage. Tiff and I came together. We've been married 10 years. We got together 12 years ago. She had 3 kids. I had 4 kids. And then we've had one together. And we run a business together and have done this. And one of the reasons we do it is much like you guys. We want to show, everything looks great. Like if you just see us on the surface, but there's a lot to it that's not so pretty, not so easy. And so we love highlighting heroes' journeys where there's this protagonist, this wonderful character that you fall in love with, and you guys are easy to fall in love with. You go on this journey. You come across challenges. You find ways to get through the challenges. So that's our guest today, Jon and Tracy Gossett. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Well, we appreciate it.
Yeah, so did you listen to their podcast? I just recently told him, you be in charge of finding podcast guests. And he's like, oh, okay, so we're interviewing these guys, Jon Gossett. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, have you listened to their podcast? And I was like, no, I haven't. And so did you listen to their podcast first?
Yeah.
And then invite them on?
Well, I listened to the clips, and then I was like, oh, they're talking about the same stuff we're talking about.
That's so cool.
And so tell us a little bit about
appreciate
your
you
I'm
listen,
excited.
Because without you, we'd only be at 1 listener. And so, thank you for taking it for 2.
That's fun because figuring out how many listeners you actually have is tricky. So if you're already figuring that out, that's pretty good.
Yeah, right. Well, it's easy. If I can count it on one hand, no. Well, yeah, so we decided, I've been doing a podcast for 3 seasons for Life's Worth Living Foundation, and it's kind of been suicide.
Pull that mic up just a little closer.
Suicide prevention is kind of one of those deals that it's serious. And I've said for years and years, I don't know why I'm supposed to do it because I think I'm funny. And I might be the only person that laughs at my jokes, but I think I'm hilarious.
I laugh at your jokes. I think you're funny.
So I said to Tracy, I go, gosh, we ought to do one that features us. And I think that's just kind of, I don't know if it's something that social media has done to us, but we all seem to look at pictures and see things and we go, okay, they got the perfect life. They've got everything together. Everything's going good for those people. And behind the scenes, you have no idea what people are going through. Now, we see things that people are going through suicide prevention, where people get in dark places and people struggle. Everybody has a struggle. You just don't know what it is, right? And so Beauty and the Shitshow is finding beauty in life that all too often is really just a shit show. We're just hanging on, keeping our arms and legs inside the ride at all times, you know?
I think that's perfect because it is your lightheartedness and your bright light, like both of you. I think it's why you're able to take on something like Life's Worth Living Foundation and do what you guys have done. And for those of you that are not from Tooele County, I think you guys are pretty well known in our community for the work that you do. And it's pretty amazing.
Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize, but so when they met, Tracy already had your oldest, right?
I had 2 kids.
Oh, 2.
Sorry.
You had 2 when you met. Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I had 2. My ex-husband left me when I was 6 months pregnant with my daughter. So I had a 4-year-old and I was 6 months pregnant.
Oh, wow.
You know, something that's we love diving into blended families, what we call blended, not broken, because first of all, the failure rate across the board is so much higher. When one partner brings a child into the relationship, marriages where they don't. And Jon had been through a divorce as well, right?
I had.
Yeah.
I did a Hollywood one. So we got married, and before we sent out the thank yous for the gifts, I think she had already figured out I was a loser and she was gone.
But you didn't bring any kids into this marriage?
No, we weren't even married. I mean, 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Wow.
that tells you.
I loved what you said. Yeah. He calls it tell me what you said because it was funny.
I was married for 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days. That's half of 666 because I married Satan. I liked her, but she liked my friends. We'll just put it that way.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and they talked about the trauma of betrayal, and you've talked about that. So I'm curious. Like you guys, you've got 28 years now. Is that right? 28 years that you've been
amazing.
That you've been together, and you did it. You had 2 kids, and you've had 2 since then, and 6 grandkids.
Yeah.
Can you believe that crap?
That's amazing.
Wow.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, you've done it against odds because 40 to 50% of marriages fail in divorce. And then second marriages, it's somewhere between 60 to 80%. And the reason why the number's a little off is because some people are together for so long that it's a common law marriage, and they should have been, they count as a divorce, just because it's so hard when you bring all the baggage that comes from previous relationships. Right. And the 2 biggest reasons why second marriages fail, I don't know if you guys know this, are kids and ex-spouses. Those are the 2 biggest reasons.
Amen. No,
It makes sense. It's not surprising especially if you're in a blended marriage, knowing how hard it can be.
And ours was especially hard because I was young, and
that's a great
very
point.
immature, and after going through what I'd gone through with my first marriage, I don't know that I was that kind to women. I was a hater. I just
maybe a little jaded.
Yeah, I was, because I thought I'm a nice guy. If I get married,
It happened to you twice. You had your other fiance had cheated on you, and your wife cheated on you.
Man,
so.
I took a real big chance on you, babe. But so I mean, it was one of those deals. I questioned this, and I think we might have talked about it on our second episode, but it's like, it's a 50-50 shot at making it, basically for your first marriage.
Yeah.
But yet we all do it, right? I started thinking, Father Ken at the Catholic Church might have been the smart one, but those odds aren't that great, and we all jump in.
No, especially with everything that's on the line when we do it.
Yep.
Which it makes second marriages even that more crazy, especially when kids are involved.
It is. And I'll tell you, 28 years, I wake up every morning and I beg her to stay one more day.
You do
just
not.
But that's actually that. Maybe you don't beg her, but making a choice. Yeah. If you wake up every day and you say today, because the truth is, once you've been through a divorce, you realize it's always an option.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't end you. Everybody survives divorce. Most people survive divorce. And so I think that's why second marriages can end so quickly and so abruptly, because both parties know, hey,
Yeah.
This doesn't have to work. And I actually think, I have a friend who told me one time, he said, marriages, imagine if a marriage, rather than being this lifetime commitment, imagine it was a yearly commitment.
Yeah, right.
Where you said, I'm going to promise for the next year. In a year, we'll renegotiate.
I saw a TikTok just yesterday, actually, where a woman was like, these marriage licenses should have an expiration date. They should just be good for 1 year. And then you have to renew it every year. So you have to make the conscious choice you want another year.
Have it be like a fishing license, you know?
Yeah.
Good until it's good for this season.
That's right.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like you guys you've had to figure some things out along the way. Tiff and I have our opinions about what's worked for us, but I'm curious, like, are there some key factors that you guys credit to your success? And I'm not saying like success being that you have everything figured out, but you're doing it another day.
You're still together.
You're still together.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really because we just put both feet in and decided whatever we were going to make it work. And so instead of always having one foot out the door and thinking the grass is greener on the other side, we're going to work through the problems.
Yeah. So being like really committed. It is funny because so many marriages, I feel like people are like, oh, well, they trigger me, so that must be a sign that we're not meant to be, or like, you know, they're getting on my nerves or whatever, when really that is the work. That's the challenge. Like, you're supposed to get through that stuff. It's not supposed to be easy.
That's the truth.
And you're not going to like each other every day.
Right.
What are you saying?
It's so true.
It really
It's
is
very
true.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you don't go get a divorce because you're going through a rough patch.
Right.
I love that commitment. John, what were you going to say?
You know, I was going to be funny, and I was thinking she's awful close. She could probably hit me if I said it. I'm going to say it anyway. So, great advice that her grandparents gave when we got married. Her grandmother said to her, honey, make sure that you're up before your husband every day and make sure your makeup and your hair is done. And she said something about when he comes home from work, be working on his dinner or boiling water so that he thinks you're doing his makeup. And Grandpa told me, well, if she ever acts like a child, put her over your knee and give her a spanking. Treat her. Love you, Grandpa. That was cool. So
Yeah, great advice.
I said, yeah, try that. It won't work well for you.
So you got the advice from grandparents that you didn't pay attention to, but loved them anyway. I'm guessing. Maybe not. I don't know.
No, I did love them dearly, but
Yes.
yeah, not good advice.
Right.
I thought it was great.
That's pretty good. Well, the commitment thing's an interesting thing because commitment shows up in so many different ways, right? Yeah. And when I think about commitment, Tiff and I actually just had creating some framework for some trainings that we're doing, and commitment was the number one thing that we both agreed on. That was it, and not just commitment to each other, but to like to the process, right? That what you said, Tracy, that it's not going to be sunshine and roses every day. There's going to be hard days.
Yeah.
Made me think of Brad actually got a tattoo shortly after we got married that said all in, and it had 7 like pocket sevens cards because that was our anniversary day.
Nice.
And that was his like all in, we're making this happen. And I was like, okay, let's do it. He still gives me crap because I don't have a tattoo for him yet. But
Yeah, but funny true story is I forgot our first anniversary.
yes,
Whoa.
Even though I had
totally
it tattooed
did.
on my
he
arm.
totally did.
It's a funny story, actually, and I'll tell it. I don't think I've told it on our podcast. The night before our first anniversary, my children were at our house because I had split custody, or not even split custody.
Every other weekend
custody of my kids. And my son was going to open up the garage door at our house, and our garage door code at the time was 0707, our anniversary. And he asked Tiff, what's the code? And she said 0707. And he goes, oh, yeah, your anniversary. She said,
And then
yeah.
he stops
and he goes,
for a second. He's
wait,
like,
that's tomorrow. And Tiff said, yeah. And I hadn't said anything about it because truthfully, not thought about it. And he
They
said,
had plans the next day, so he sat there for a minute and he goes, "Does my dad know that?" And I was like, "I don't know."
so that night in bed, we're lying in bed, and she said, so, we're breaking down the day and then making plans for the next day. And she said, "So what's going on tomorrow?" And I said,
Going to watch Jesse ride bulls.
yeah, going to
Sweet.
watch a friend who's going to go ride a bull. She's like, "Okay." And she's like, "What else?" And I was like, "And then, I'll have to take the kids home later in the day because it was a Sunday." She said, "Okay, is that it?" And I said, "Yeah, that's about it." And she said, "Do you even know what tomorrow is?" And just the way she said it, I thought, I'm missing something here. And then it hit me. I realized what day it was. And I begged her forgiveness, and she always has that on me because I did. I tattooed it on me, and then I forgot it.
Oh my God.
Just like, what was the point of tattooing it on your arm if you're gonna forget?
After that, he started spending a little bit more time in the mirror.
That's right. Looking at it. So we talk all the time though that, and in talking with other couples that are, and I like to remind men because I speak more with men than women. Hey, this isn't going to be all like sunshine, roses. It's not going to be easy all the time. That's not what you're committing to. You're committing. I mean, one of the first things you say is good times, bad times, whatever.
Right.
All of it, right? So I'm curious, like, what's that? How's that showing up for you guys? What's that? Anything come to mind for you?
Some coming to mind to you?
I would just say early on, there might have been times for both of us where we said, I just don't know if it's worth the headache. I don't know if it's worth the hassle. Coming into try to form a family where kids already have a dad, right? And that was tough. And I think it took a minute till I really believed that, listen, we're making a family. We're going to make a family. We never talked about no step kids. I didn't like the term. And I don't know that I'd known anybody that had a blended family. And so to me, it was like, listen, if I'm coming in, they're my kids. I'm going to treat them like they're my kids. And I feel like that's the one thing I've done well, because a lot of people don't even know.
Well,
So huge.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I would have never guessed
I was
just
gonna
by
say.
watching the way you guys interact and
We have people tell us that, or at least I do. I always have people tell me that. Oh, really? They're not your kids? And I'm like, well, they are.
They
'Cause,
are, yeah.
David was 4. He's 33 now. Sarah was 3 months old. She's 29. And it's like, I'm the only dad that she's ever lived with. Do they get mad at me? Yes. Like any kid, they've all been teenagers. All our kids are grown now. So, I mean, did they get mad at me? Were there days that David wished his dad was back? Sure, absolutely. Was there days I wished I didn't have to deal with her ex-husband? Absolutely. We get along great. We went to Jim's family restaurant with him about a month ago.
oh, that's awesome.
And he and his new significant other and Sarah and her husband and Tracy and I sat by Mike. We get along fine.
We were lucky too. He didn't come around that often either. He wasn't like that every other weekend parent. So, I mean,
Yeah.
he could be gone for a year and then come back into their life. So that was a little bit easier, I think, than a lot of people.
Yeah, but that also poses some issues because, I mean, the kids are going to deal with some trauma when that's the case, right?
I was going to say, there were many times when David was 4, 5, 6, Dad would promise to come.
To a game and didn't show up.
Then he didn't show up, and then we'd go home, and David would be distraught because, I think that's one thing that kids want to know. They want to know that they're loved. Mm-hmm. They want to know that from a parent. Even Sarah, he left before she was born. In the back of her mind, I think she's always wondered, why didn't he love me enough to stay?
Yeah.
I think we always have these thoughts, the voice in our head that tells us things. But I just think it's been important for them to know that I love them and that we're a family. And I laughed because I never asked them to call me Dad, and they didn't. They called me John. But when they'd refer to me, they would say, my dad.
Your dad, yeah.
And Sarah got into high school, and on social media, she put Sarah Gossett. And I remember bribing David before he got married. I'm like, let's go change your name. Let's change it to Gossett. Because it was interesting. I had an older brother that died, and his name was David. And I'm going, when I have my first kid, I'm going to name him David. Wow. Half my work was done. I'm just lazy. It was half my work was done. And,
That's so beautiful.
And David's my kid. And so it's worked out.
That's really cool.
He didn't want to change his name, but
He didn't.
Yeah.
But
well,
you know what? I get it. And that's cool.
Yeah.
There was no hard feelings.
It's so similar for us because Trenton is my son and Javen, both of the boys you met when you came in, they're my boys. They're our boys, but very, very similar. They've always called Brad, but when they're talking to other people, they say my dad.
Yeah.
My dad.
Same deal.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll refer to me. We have different, like pet names for each other. The boys call me Pop sometimes, or sometimes Trenton likes to call me Papa Bear. And there's different, we have different terms of endearment that we refer to. And as far as I'm concerned, they're just my boys.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky enough to be a father of 5 boys, and so they're just all my boys.
That's awesome.
And I love to say, like, me and my boys can handle anything. It's not because any of them are my biological son, and they're just all my boys.
Yeah.
And that's actually a key, one of the things that we highlight. We talk about that, and you just brought it up, the importance of like integrating as a family unit. Mm-hmm. And for step families, blended families, that is so crucial, because even if you're not together all the time, when you are together, you can create your own kind of like your own team. Mm-hmm. It adds levels of complication because like my biological kids, their mom lives in Sandy and she remarried, and they have step siblings from that family. And so they have to, they've got multiple family units. But if we found out that if you focus on the struggle, if you focus on the challenges, then that's all the kids will see. They'll see struggle and challenges. But if we focus on, well, this is really cool because like for a long time, we couldn't even get together because of the animosity. We couldn't even get together for birthdays and stuff. We'd have to have 2 birthdays. Well, that's a great thing. You get 2 separate birthdays.
I was going to say.
You get 2 Christmas.
But it was really cool this year because his son's 16th birthday was in September. And for the first time, we all got together for his birthday party. We had one big birthday party with both families, his step siblings on his mom's side and us. And it was just us because it was the first time, we've had a lot of milestones this year, and we had 2 of our kids get married. And so there's been a lot of healing with their mom.
And I was going to say, I think time heals a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like I had mentioned that, when we first got together, there was a lot of stress between me and her ex-husband. I didn't like him. He didn't like me. I think and how do I word this? Because I don't mean this to be offensive or anything, but I think sometimes when people walk away and say, okay, I'm done, that might be their intent for the moment. But then when somebody comes in, then it's, well, you can't be there.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
This is my family.
Yeah.
And they want their family back. And I think that's how he felt. And so he didn't like me. I didn't care for him. And we had words, I would say till Sarah had graduated high school. I think we had, and I remember the day that he made his final child support payment. And I think Sarah was 22, 21, 22.
It was a while.
It went a little further because he had a little catching up to do. But when he finally made that last payment, he actually called me and he says, "Hey, I owe you a thank you." He says, "You've done a great job raising the kids." And it meant a lot.
Yeah.
That's
you know.
awesome.
So I get along with the guy. When he comes to town, we go see him, or he comes and sees us and stuff, and it's all good. And I think there's a blessing to that because time heals.
I think
Yeah.
we're nicer to him than his own children are nicer because they hold him to a higher standard.
Yeah.
And so they see it differently than we see it. So kids see things differently than grown-ups see.
Of course.
Makes
Well, but
sense.
that's a great thing though that you said, because you get to hold him up, and you don't have to focus on his failings, because as an adult we're able to see our exes or our spouse's exes as kind of like ourselves, just a human who's flawed, and
Yeah.
turns out they're not perfect, just like I'm not
Yeah,
perfect.
right. And everybody grows up at their own pace.
Right.
You know, it's not like that we all turn 18 and all of a sudden we're not immature and we're not, some of us, it takes a little longer.
Yeah.
And, I think he's to that point, and I'll always say to the kids, be nice. He's your dad, be
Yeah.
nice. And I think you've got to give him, I don't know. I think you have to show him a little bit of grace, because you know what? There's been times in his life where maybe the kids felt like he wasn't up to where he needed to be. But when somebody's trying, I think you got to give him a little bit of love and say, you know what? At least he's trying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would want, if I had had kids prior, I would want my kids to feel that same way towards me. So I try to always say to him, be nice,
Yeah. Well,
he's
that's
trying.
That's one of the keys that we talk about as well. Like, it's important to understand that whether, like in your example, Tracy, your second, he wasn't even there for her birth, but he is still, she knows, like, something inside, she's 50% her dad. And so one of the biggest traumas that kids can experience is hearing somebody that they love and trust, their parents, talk bad and point out the bad about the other parent, because they know deep down inside, well, I'm 50% that person. And even though they're not going through this consciously, subconsciously, they're, okay, that guy's a liar, that guy's a cheat, that gal's a whatever, no good, alcoholic, whatever. Am I that?
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
that make me that? Because as children, we all go through that. Oh, my dad's this, that means I can be this. My mom's this, that means I can be this.
And I try to not do that because my mom and dad were, well, they didn't actually get divorced, but they didn't live together for 6 years before my mom died, and then shortly after my dad died. But my mom would get so upset if we were going to go with my dad, and so I never went. And because I saw what my little brother and sister had to go through when they came home. And so I just didn't go. And there was so much animosity. So I never even wanted that for my kids. So we were pretty nice, even though Mike wasn't a good dad a lot of times. I never tried to badmouth him. I always would say, maybe try to understand his point of view at this point of his life. So I've always never tried to talk badly about him just because I knew how that felt as a kid.
Boy,
It's
what a
super
great
important.
perspective.
It's been really, really difficult for me because my ex has actually, there's so much to adore about him. He went, and I really do just have a lot of compassion for him because he was in the Iraqi war. And he dealt with a lot of PTSD and a lot of issues, a lot of mental issues when he got back. And part of the reason for the divorce was because he wasn't willing to get help at the level that he needed it. And it was starting to, it was just getting bad. He was getting violent and it was getting worse and worse. And so anyway, I left, and at first he really fought for the kids, and he fought for 50-50 custody, and he didn't want me to go. So he did everything he could to make my life hell when I had first left. But then I don't exactly know what happened. I think it was drugs. I don't really know, but he kind of, he hasn't been involved in the kids' lives. My daughter was only 5 months old when I left, and he was involved until she was like 6 or 7. And now she's going to be 13 next month, and he hasn't come around at all. And he lives here. He's around, and he just chooses not to come around. And so it's a struggle for all of my kids. But, we just try to hold space for them and, do what we can to not talk bad, because that would be the easy thing to do, right? It's easy to do that. And I don't know, it's a difficult thing.
And I think one thing that we don't think about when it comes to marriage, right, is who you are is because of the way that you were raised. I mean, your childhood made up who you are today, right? Not only that, but there was a quote I read a long time ago, and I'll screw it up, so I'll just pretend it's my quote. But, but it had talked about, it was a guy that was dying, and he was getting up in age, and he left a journal entry for his kids, and he said, "Listen, anything good in me, I hope you carry on. But all the bad in me, I hope you bury it with me and let it go to the grave." Because, I look at both my parents have passed, both of Tracy's have passed. And I can look at things from my parents and say, you know what? They were really great at this. I want to make sure that I continue that. There's a lot of things that maybe they weren't good at. And so we've tried to look at those and make changes. One of the things that we talked about on our podcast is although my dad and I were best friends, and I knew he loved me because he would be the first one to have my back no matter what, he never told me he loved me. And I was his neighbor until he passed away at 81. I think I was close to 50 when he passed. And he had never told me he loved me. Now, he didn't need to, because I knew he did. But that's one thing that I'm like, my kids aren't going to...
They're not going to wonder.
They're not going to wonder. So we were joking on the podcast saying, we tell them every time we hang up that we love them. And I'm like, they probably get sick of hearing it. Maybe we should just stop telling them. No,
I don't think they do.
But you know what I mean?
No.
Yeah.
We figured out, and Tracy, I know she's figured out the same thing. Not to speak for you, but I mean, she knows what she doesn't want to carry on. And so I think hopefully as human beings, hopefully we're amping it up. We're getting a little bit better every generation.
Every generation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, you told the story of your grandfather saying if she gets out of line, take her over your knee.
Yeah.
And we laugh about that because that's laughable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was reality.
Yeah.
For women 2 people ago.
Yeah.
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 Because it was 2 people ago that your grandfather thought that was an okay way to handle a wife that he was not getting along with.
Right. That's true. I would never dare do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine.
And if I did,
just looking at Tracy, I can imagine what would.
It would go well.
Yeah.
If I did, I could show you. I mean, I have the domestic violence hotline right here.
Right. Yeah.
On speed dial.
Yeah. And the woman acting like she's making dinner, like that's her role. I mean,
it is funny, and times have changed.
Times
right?
have changed, but we get better.
Yeah.
That's the beauty, because while we're laughing about that, but there were other things that we can absolutely take from our parents and from our grandparents. I've gone through this process a lot as I do work on self-healing, and it's figuring out, you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Mm-hmm. That expression. Take the good, take what works, and we also talk about, because you touched on it, Jon, but we are who we, in so many ways, who we are because of what we learned from our parents. Mm-hmm. And not just our parents, but society, culture, so many things. And they ingrain these stories into our head. I heard something you talking about, like when you first met Tracy, you'd been through a divorce and the shame that comes with a divorce.
Right.
Well, where does shame come from?
Yeah.
A 2-year-old child doesn't know shame. unless, when you look at a little baby, they make a mistake. There's no mistakes, right? But somehow, because we're now 21, 22, 30, whatever, we're supposed to know everything. We're supposed to have everything figured out. And if we make a mistake, we're supposed to be shamed. We're taught shame, which is an interesting thing.
Well, and I hopefully I'm not taking this in a different direction, but
No, take it.
But shame, and I watch it through. All I can offer is what I've experienced. Right? There's a lot of shame in what we do in suicide prevention. There's shame in suicide. Well, how do you let yourself get in a place where you could be so dark that you would say, I don't want to go on? I believe the shame in that comes from the fact we just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Shame in divorce. Why? Because we don't want to talk about it. And so I think that's what's so important about what you guys are doing with your podcast and so important in what we're doing. And I think it's okay to understand, we're human. Man, we're going to suck at a lot of stuff. And we're going to be okay at other stuff. And we're going to make up for it in other areas. And I think that's why, podcasts in general, I think it gives a format where people can be real and just lay it on the line and say, you know what? From the outside in, maybe some people are clouded in their judgment enough to think that Tracy and I have it together. Joke's on them. It's not, we don't.
Right.
But you know what I mean? I think shame comes from not being willing to put it out there.
Yeah. We're all perfectly imperfect, and it's okay to, nobody's perfect. You hit the nail on the head. And I think the more that people can talk about their stories and talk about their struggles and show that, the path hasn't been easy for anybody. I haven't ever met anyone that says, oh, everything's been great my entire life. Like everybody has struggled. Everybody's had their things, but for some reason we think we have to wear these masks that, make it look like we have it all figured out, like we're perfect. And we think we have to change the masks depending on who it is that we're talking to that day, or, we're a mom, so we need to wear the mom mask, or, we're at our job. And so instead of just letting people see who we are, just the whole everything, right?
Well, I think our society has set us up to fail that way because, that first episode we talked about, I said I blame it on Walt Disney because it gives every young girl the impression that there's a Prince Charming just waiting around the corner. And what's going to happen? That movie ends and they've sailed off into the sunset. No struggles.
Right.
There's never been, in the history of Walt Disney, there has never been a film that lets you see him ride off and then followed it up with the first year of marriage. Right? It just doesn't happen. We talked about Nicholas Sparks. Give me a break. Women, those guys don't exist. We're all screw-ups. None of us are that romantic. Miss Tracy's got it probably pretty good with me because I'm just like, she wakes up to rose petals.
Pretty smooth.
Yeah,
I get it.
She's a lucky woman. She's a lucky woman. But no, life is hard. And I think social media for adults is a lot like Walt Disney for kids, right? You sit and you look at pictures and you get to see what you're assuming is their everyday life when it's really a highlight reel of the best times, right?
They're only highlighting.
Yeah,
the great,
nobody's pulling out. Oh, we're going through a really bad argument right now. Let's take a selfie.
Yeah, right.
I'm not liking anything that's coming out of your mouth, and you're not liking anything that's coming out of my mouth. Why don't we record this?
It's the truth. And so when we started the podcast, I just said to Tracy, I go, we have to be okay with sprinkling in our story. And we have to be okay making fun of ourselves.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, it wasn't smooth and it wasn't perfect. We filed for divorce the first year.
Oh, wow.
We signed the paperwork. We were just waiting for a court date. Now, I think, most people look at Tracy and go, wow, she's so lucky to have Jon. He's so wonderful. He's probably as close to perfect as they come.
Right. So, that's what most people probably say.
That's what people are thinking.
Sure.
And so this gives a look behind the scenes to now people have heard 2 episodes and they're going, how in the hell did she put up with him? Why is she still there? Then they're assuming I have money and I don't. So
Joke's on them.
yeah, right. So I don't know. I think the more that we can have real conversations and talk about it.
I do think we should allow our children. I think sometimes, because I had really an abusive childhood, but I don't think you learned how to. The shame comes from not being perfect because they made you feel that way because you were in trouble all the time. So I always say to I've said this to my own kids, because it's hard to be a grandparent and watch your kids punish the grandkids, and you're thinking, oh, you shouldn't be going there, but my thing is we all make mistakes, and so I have a niece that's really wanted her kids to express how they're feeling. So if they're having a temper tantrum or something, on the ground and screaming and crying, she gets down onto their level and says, "What are you feeling? Why are you doing that?" And even though they're little, she's trying to get them to understand why they feel that way. Because sometimes we want to feel like that, throwing a temper tantrum on the ground because life is hard. But we're not going to get punished when we're having a bad day. Kids have a bad day and they're getting punished.
Yeah. When it's really, they're just trying to express what it is they're feeling, and they're not feeling very good. I saw this video. My daughter actually showed me this video the other day, and it was the cutest thing. It was a young mom playing with her little baby, and there was like a 4-year-old little boy, and she was just showing the little baby the attention, and the little boy comes up and he taps her on the shoulder. He's like, Mom, I need to tell you something. And she's like, "What's up, honey?" And he's like, "I'm feeling really jealous right now that you're giving him all of your attention and none to me."
And see, that's what my niece has taught her kids, to come up and say that. But how many kids really know how to say that?
They don't.
I was scared to death. I would have never said anything. I don't even think I knew how I felt because I was waiting for, because there was so much abuse.
Which probably, I didn't mean to cut you off, but what probably makes it so important for them to learn it now is because, probably one of the number one reasons marriages don't work is communication, right?
Yes.
Because we don't know how to, guys, we don't learn that in man school. Communicate, right?
Yeah, so they can't come up and tell you how they feel.
No.
Right.
Well, we've been practicing.
Yeah, this is something we work on. We get intentional about, because you were talking about temper tantrums, and I don't know if you said, but what I understood was we don't throw temper tantrums as adults, but we do. Like, especially men, it just looks different.
You just go and slam the cabinets.
We walk into the house, and the energy that we're carrying is just like, and then you open the door and you shut the door extra hard, not hard enough so that it breaks, because you don't want to
have to fix it.
You're the guy that's going to have to fix it. And you open up, where's the gosh darn, or worse, thing that's not where it's supposed to be. And
this kitchen's who didn't put these dishes in the dishwasher?
I'm sure I'm the only guy that does this, but this is an adult version of a temper tantrum.
Doesn't sound familiar.
Because it's a temper tantrum, because I am not saying, what's really going on is, before I left the office, or before I came home, I found out that the buyer that was supposed to close on a deal is not going to. And I have an interest payment due in 15 days, and I know I don't have enough time to get it under contract again and get it sold, and I am scared. Mm-hmm. I don't know what we're going to do. And instead of coming home and saying, "Sweetheart, this is what's going on, and I'm scared," I come home, and the first thing that happens, and I project that fear that I'm feeling onto my kids, and then now they're dealing with it. And then how to make it even cooler is, then you have a little bit of self-awareness as a human, and you're like, "Holy cow, I just did this thing." You don't even for me, I don't even dive into the, this is why I'm doing it, but this is what I did. And so then I get into the shame, because I am an accountable human. I'm a man that likes to take responsibility for my actions. And then I dive into the shame, and instead of talking about that, I just go into the bathroom, or I go into the bedroom. And then what we see in today's men is they're diving into addiction, diving into self-destructive behavior, diving into other women, diving into other things. And it could all just be handled by what you said. We don't talk.
Yeah.
We can talk, and we can say, "I'm really scared." And and shine the light on it. I think you even said bring it to light. And because the greatest antiseptic known to man is sunlight.
We had this happen on one of our podcasts once, one of our podcast episodes. I actually got really triggered. We walked through we argued on our podcast and walked through all the steps of trying to uncover what was really going on. It was kind of a really vulnerable.
Yeah. So to hear that there are
episode.
mothers out there, young mothers that are using these skills of, hey, let's talk about what's really going on. Let's not because yes, you're feeling this. Where's that originating from? And it's just a beautiful skill. And,
it is.
And it's not a skill that
absolutely.
we were not, we're Gen Xers. We're all the same age. She's a little younger, but our parents, baby boomers, did not teach us this.
Yeah.
And that's not their fault. They weren't taught it. How could they have taught it to us?
And I was going to say, and it's, again, I can only speak to the things that I'm familiar with, but isn't it interesting that ties so well together with, getting the kids to communicate so that they can grow up and have a better marriage. The addiction, again, the same thing. We have to get back to the root on all of it. Whether it's your parenting skills or your skills as a husband or a wife, and addicts don't understand why they do those things until they get back to say, what got me there? What is it that actually takes me to that place?
And if you can learn to talk, like you were saying earlier, it solves this problem of suicide, this epidemic that we're experiencing right now. It all boils down to if you're able to talk about your feelings and not have to feel so much shame around what you're feeling.
And shame is so stupid.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, in all honesty, none of us should be ashamed, because I don't care who you are, whoever's listening to this podcast right now. It doesn't matter what you've done in your past. It's not a race, but I'll tell you, everybody does the best they can with what they've been given.
Yes.
Right? There's nobody that's wakes up and says, man, I'm going to go screw up everything today, right? But life happens and life's messy. And I really believe that everybody's intentions are good to do the best they can. But some people have been handed a bunch of crap. You know?
Yeah.
And we don't really learn without screwing up. That's where all the juice is,
Right.
That's where all the good stuff is. When you screw up, you learn those big lessons in those moments where you make mistakes. And that's what we're all here to do. We're all here to screw up so we can grow and get better.
And honestly, I mean, look at the movie business, right? Movies and books, they always want to see somebody that goes through it, loses everything, and then comes out the winner in the end, right? I mean,
Right.
we eat that crap up.
Yeah. Because
So
it's the human condition.
So there shouldn't be any shame in a life of learning.
Well, that's the hero's journey, right?
And I also think that it's the reason why I think being an entrepreneur can be so important, because I feel like you learn that lesson at a really high level being an entrepreneur, because you have to be okay with failing a lot.
Oh, yeah.
They say that as an entrepreneur, you fail like 75% of the time, and we do it for the 25% of the time that you're right, that things worked out, right? And you have to be willing to be okay with that.
I must be an overachiever. I think I failed more than that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, John. Yeah, the cool thing, because like every great story that's ever been told, highlight is that low valley. Like how low can you go? How bad can it get? And then watching that struggle, getting up one more day, the Rocky Balboas of the world who get up and and in the cold and go run up the stairs and hit the cow, right? Or whatever it is. Those are the stories that as adults we love, because the fairy tales, those exist for kids. And I understand them to a certain level, but the overcoming the struggle, that's what adult life is about. That's what you're focusing on. You focus on it in your your podcast. You focus on it in your nonprofit, Life Worth Living. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that.
I did too.
We've been talking relationship, and I've been just an admirer of your guys for so long for the work that you've done in the Life's Worth Living Foundation. And we've got like 10 minutes left before we get done, and not everybody knows your story. We have people that listen because of real estate stuff. So I'm curious if you can, in 10 minutes, kind of give us a breakdown of how you got started, because you talk about feeling called to it, how that happened, what you see happening, and where you're going with it.
Well, so this February will be 9 years that we've been doing it. Tooele had a terrible 2014. We lost a ton of people to suicide in 2022.
Wasn't it 22 people?
24, I think.
24,
so 2 a month. And we ended up losing 2 people that we knew pretty well. One of them wrestled with my son at high school, and he was a football player, wrestler, very well known.
on the debate team. He was
Great kid.
You would have never known.
And he took his life. We were at the Parade of Homes in St. George and got word that he had taken his life. And the very next day, my best friend out here in Tooele's son took his life. So 2 days, 2 people. And, you know.
You were standing at funerals back to back.
Yeah. Had a funeral at the Catholic Church, one at the LDS Church the next day. It was just a downer. And both of them great kids. I mean, really great kids. What they were going through was so paramount to them that they just felt like they couldn't get through it. But from the outside looking in, it was just a speed bump. You know, you should have been able to get through that. And it's unfortunate to lose anybody. But I felt really strongly for days that something needed to be done. And I remember we have a lot of conversations at 3 a.m. because we're both laying there, not sleeping. And Tracy goes, "Why are you awake?" And I said, "You're going to be mad, but I feel like we need to start this nonprofit for suicide prevention." Tracy's my reality check. She doesn't sugarcoat it. She looks at me, she goes, "You don't know anything about suicide." Okay, well, that's a good point, but but we can figure it out. And we just felt like we needed to. Well, at that time, Utah has 29 counties. Tooele was 4th in the state for suicide. We were one of the 4 highest counties. To date, we have dropped from 4th to 21st out of 29 counties. I'm not saying it's because of what we did.
I think it's all of us working together.
Yeah.
As a community.
And I think, you know, it's interesting because we were at a nonprofit thing the other night with you guys, right? And I thought to myself, and maybe this is just me being selfish, but I'm thinking that the nonprofit thing that the 4 of us were at the other night, I thought, isn't it cool to be able to share those stories? And people, it tugs at their heartstrings, and people are willing to say, I want to be involved in it. Suicide prevention isn't one of those things. That's not my story to tell, you know? And so it's difficult to pass that on because I'm not at liberty to tell somebody's story. So I think a lot of the time, the struggle we have is how to stay relevant in a community where you can't talk about what you've gone through. I will say there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. My poor wife has been dragged out I don't know how many times.
You've been out at 3 a.m. trying to find somebody sitting at people's houses.
We-
People don't see that.
We've been to 2 occasions where people had weapons and were ready to cash it in, and we've had to stay with them, take the weapon. I've been out looking for people late at night, and unfortunately had to find people and that we didn't make it in time for. And so there's a lot of it that sucks. But again, if we don't do it, who's going to do it? And so I got a good wife. I think you have to have somebody that's all in and is willing to say, you know, the other night when I was leaving the house at 3 a.m, she goes, "Do you know where you're going?" And I said, "I think I know where the house is." And she goes, "Okay, I'm coming with you because I know where it's at." And, which is good. I didn't want to be knocking on doors at 3 a.m. until I found the right house. But, it's not just us. We've got a board of directors. We have a coalition. We do. I would like to think we do some amazing things, but so much of it has to stay private that I wished it was something that we could tell everybody. But we are doing good, and not just us, but everybody that's working in that arena in Tooele County. Everybody's doing good, but it's something that has to continue. I mean, if the roles were reversed, and I've never struggled with depression and had those thoughts, but let me tell you, anybody can have those thoughts. And so if roles were reversed, I would want somebody to be there for me and my family as well. So I don't know. What do you think?
I think you said needs to be said.
So what, I know a lot of people in Tooele County know, but what does someone do who's like, if somebody's knows, if they're worried about a family member or someone themselves are having thoughts like this, where do they go for help?
I'll tell you. So we've been working on it since 2015. We got the Safe UT app, which is a free app to download for your kids, and it's school specific. So all the schools are listed on it. Your kids can sign up. It's totally anonymous. Their buddies can report if their buddy is struggling, and somebody will reach out and help them. The reason we started Safe UT app was because we were turned down at the legislature to try to get a 3-digit crisis line. So in the 70s, 911 came to be. How many lives do you think have been saved by 911?
Millions.
Countless. So we wanted to have 611. We weren't able to get it, and there's only so many 3-digit numbers. But in August 14th of 2018, President Trump signed into law 988. And it rolled out this June or July. It was over the summer. It rolled out. 50 states now have 988. If you call 911, you don't want to tie up a line for a long period of time because that could mean somebody else isn't getting through. So we didn't want people to call mental health crises to 911 because it just tied up lines. If there were a fire, if there was life, that, you know what I mean? 911 is so specific. You need to have that there.
Yeah.
988 is now passed, and it passed because of Tooele County, and it is nationwide. It's rolled out to all 50 states. And the first month of 988 being available, 100,000 more people got the help they needed. So
That is amazing, John.
That is.
I did not know that part of the story. And if I can, since we're talking about being vulnerable, I've dealt with suicidal thoughts and suicide ideation before. And the messaging that you and your organization puts out has made a difference in my life.
Oh,
and you just never know when it's going to, or who it's going to impact.
Yeah.
Because we all do a pretty damn good job of putting up these exteriors that look pretty strong and pretty, bulletproof. And nothing could be further from the truth. Inside each of us is this, well, not each of us, but inside some of us is this shame that if we're not being honest about it and being open about it, it can absolutely consume you.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're still here.
Thank you. Me
Yes,
too.
we are glad you're still here.
And I plan to be here for a long time. It's been and it's something that I've spoken openly about with Tiff, and I don't think it should carry the shame that it does. I mean, just like people that deal with, I also have a prosthetic knee. I don't have any problem talking about the fact that I blew out my knee when I was 15 and had to and never really rehabbed it the right way. And so when I was 46, I had to have a prosthetic knee put in. It sucks.
Yeah.
But it's just what I have to deal with.
Exactly.
And these thoughts, it's just something that I don't even know where they came from. I can't, I never expected to have them. And then they were there and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And like I said, I think if we all walked around with signs that talked about things we struggle with, I don't know. I have a pretty big forehead. I don't even think you could fit it all on there. You know what I mean? So I'm going, it's just one of those things. We're just all doing the best we can with what we've been given.
Yeah.
So
that's absolutely right.
Well, thank you for everything that you guys do. It really is amazing. And I think everybody in our county has been affected by it at one level or another. I remember a few summers ago, we were out working in our yard and we had a neighbor who, their son, who we were fairly close with, we were just at a neighborhood party a few weeks prior to that and been with their son. And we saw the ambulance coming by and didn't know what it was at the time. But a few hours later, we figured out that their son had committed suicide, and they found him, and it was horrific. People's lives are changed forever,
absolutely.
It's hard.
Yeah, the parents never, if your kid dies of cancer, you're still hurting. Mm-hmm. But suicide has a whole different hurt on parents not saying you're not going to hurt. Losing a child's terrible, but suicide, it doesn't mean, with our support group, it can be 10 years ago to someone that just happened, and the pain level is still there 10 years later, like the person that just happened. I had our friend say to this lady, it had been 10 years, and so he said, well, when is this pain going to stop? And she said, it's not ever going to. Life sort of goes forward, but the pain never goes away.
Well, I think as a parent, there's a certain amount of guilt, and you feel almost responsible, Well,
I think that's why our support group works. They always say you should divide them. The people that are contemplating it and people that have lost should not be together. But ours actually is together. Mm-hmm. And the people that have lost someone has the best advice for the people that are contemplating it.
That makes so much sense.
Because in all honesty, they've had a long time to think of what they would have said to their loved one.
Of course.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, 988.
988.
That's I've seen it, but I did not realize the significance of that as it tied to Tooele County and just as it tied to the mental health issue, because it's somebody, so from what I understand, somebody you can call and you can just talk.
Yeah, and it's totally anonymous.
Yeah.
You can give your name, you can give your location, but they will, it's I always, on my Life's Worth Living podcast, I always end it and say, listen, if you don't have that safe person, someone you can trust that you can have that conversation with, reach out and call the Lifeline, because there'll be somebody there that can walk you through the next steps. Yeah. And really, that's all you need. Mm-hmm. Something to redirect you and tell you, okay, this is what you're going to go through for the next few minutes. Let's get you through that.
Yeah. Get you through that momentary seizure. I've heard it called the suicide seizure.
Totally. And if you can get through that, my old man used to tell me, when life was hard as a teenager, he'd say, sleep on it tonight. It'll look different tomorrow. And it always did. Of
course.
So it's just getting through that
moment.
5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So,
well, thank you guys so much. Thank you for the work that you've done. And I've heard you tell that story before, and I just think it's so beautiful. Because it's everybody doing what they can do, where they see the opportunity and then doing what they can do. And when you feel called, answer the call.
Right.
That's beautiful.
All you can do.
Well, thank you guys. So if you want to listen to Jon on the suicide awareness, talk more about that. It's Life's Worth Living podcast. Is that still
Life's Worth Living podcast? We're on our third season.
Just
getting ready to pick that one back up. I've been working out of state, so we've been on pause for a minute. If you want to hear the Jon that cries, that's the one to listen to. If you want to hear to the funny Jon, we've got the other one, the
Beauty and the Shit Show.
Beauty and the Shit Show.
I love it.
With Miss Tracy.
I love it. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks.